Hello, everybody. Dom Tiberi here, joined by Adam King out in Oregon, and not the results we were hoping for as Ohio State comes up short out in Eugene, Oregon, to the Oregon Ducks, 32-31. It was second-ranked Ohio State against third-ranked Oregon. And, Adam, we thought it would be a heavyweight championship fight. We thought the Buckeyes would be able to run it down their throats. And I'll tell you, offensively, I thought Ohio State played well. I thought Ohio State scored enough points to win the game. I think there's some issues with the Ohio State offense. Injuries are huge right now, and there's some that are very concerning, especially to the offensive line. But to me, the big difference in this game was Ohio State's inability to stop, as they call, the explosive plays. That's been the thing that we have heard since Jim Knowles got here, the explosive plays. And they had too many long passes and too many missed tackles, to be honest with you. And, you don't want to point fingers. Ryan Day said after the game he didn't want to point fingers. But the defense gave up nearly 500 yards of total offense. There's a lot of other things we can talk about, and we will. But, 500 yards of offense, you're not going to win too many games when you give up that many yards.
No, you are certainly not, and I think the thing that jumps out to me the most from this game, it's not just the explosives, because those happen in football games. That is just college football. Big plays happen. But it's that they gave up explosives and then extra yards after. The lack of tackling was, I think, such a major problem out there, which is something that, they've prided themselves on fundamentals. So to see this Silver Bullet defense struggle, not just to get off the field, but to give up what should be a 3-yard run, it turns into an 8-yard run. I think about the Denzel Burke play when he was beat over the top. The receiver catches the ball at the 40-yard line. He gets it all the way down to the 10-yard line. It's the tackling that I think they're going to have to go back and focus on. And it's also the idea that they did get exposed in the secondary there. With that said, you talked about the offense. I was very, very impressed with the offense in this game if you put things in perspective. They turned it over on their own side of the ball, or on their own, near their own end zone. You can't have that happen. They had a ball hit off of them on an onside kick that was honestly genius by Dan Lanning, and yet somehow this team came up 1 point short. It was a bizarre game, and with it, Ohio State's offense, I thought Will Howard looked really good. I said, I had someone text me that they thought Will Howard struggled tonight and was a reason that the Buckeyes lost. I don't think so. I mean, we can talk about the slide and running for the yardage, and he's beating himself up about that. He was very upset after the game. But I think when he sits down and looks at the tape here, I think he answered one big question, and it is that Will Howard is capable of leading this Buckeye team through the stretch run here, and they hope taking them to a championship. He just has to be able to lead them with a defense that isn't giving up 32 points, which they'll tell you was not okay. I mean, nobody in that defensive locker room was happy with how they performed tonight. They played better in the second half, but not enough, Dom.
The other thing, when you look at the defense, and you mentioned the secondary, Denzel Burke has been so good this season and has been just impressive, interceptions and just some of the big plays that he's made. And then, all of a sudden, tonight, Oregon is going after him, and they kept going after him. Do you think they discovered that in the game, or do you think that was by design because they kept going after him and they kept finding success?
Yeah, I think they probably test. I mean, I certainly don't think you design it up to attack a 4-year cornerback that is thought to be one of the best in the country. I think they went after him and it worked. They went after him again and it worked. He was on an island a lot, and he lost that battle a few times tonight. And he is certainly going to be one of those guys that goes back to the drawing board. He is one of the most passionate leaders on this team. So to see that happen, it was quite surprising. It was concerning. That's where they've really got to go back to the drawing board and say, why are we allowing, guys to sit in the soft spot of the zone? And how are we allowing these guys to get so open at times? That's a problem that Ohio State is certainly going to have to face. And then they've got to look at the defensive line. They had no sacks tonight. That can't happen. And sacks don't always tell the whole story. That should be reminded that, sacks are not everything, because they do get edge pressure and they want to contain and they want to force Dylan Gabriel to be uncomfortable. But at some point, you just have to get to the quarterback, and they did not do that tonight. It helps the secondary when you get pressure on the quarterback, Dom.
Yeah, that was very surprising to me, because this is a Oregon offense that has given up sacks. And not to get any in this game just kind of shocked me really big time. A lot of guys came back that were on the defense, and they came back to prove a point. They came back with a chip on their shoulder. To lose this way, how tough is this going to be to come back? Now, I've always said kids are resilient. They bounce back quick, that these losses are harder on the coaches. But you've got a bunch of guys that are veterans that came back because they wanted to prove a point. They were playing angry, only to lose to this team that, I know 3 years ago when they lost to them, they felt that, in the defense, got beat up pretty good in that game, and we saw a lot of changes. How hard is it going to be to come back, and how demoralized did the guys seem to you after the game?
The guys are upset. I mean, they're obviously upset. They lost an instant thriller in college football that, 1.1 second, and maybe it's a different story that we're standing here and talking about. But I have to say this. Of all of the losses in the Ryan Day era, this might be the least detrimental we've ever seen, and that just is the new era of college football. If you're a Buckeye fan, you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and think all of our goals are gone, because none of them are. This is not that game at the end of the schedule. This was a really good Oregon team that, quite frankly, could go to the national championship in their house with the loudest crowd I've ever heard, with the largest crowd in the stadium's history, and they really handled it well, other than making the 8 penalties, which that comes to the crowd noise, the offensive PI. That it's debatable, considering it was within 5 yards that he made contact, but that's neither here nor there. You're not going to put this on the refs tonight. I will just say, I remember, Dom, this is funny, full circle here. After they first lost Oregon 3 years ago, you got on Wall-to-Wall Sports. It was my first wall, and you said, the sun will come up tomorrow. That was true back then. I think it's even truer today, because tomorrow, this team is going to regroup. They're going to go to the bye week. They're going to revamp. They're going to take a look at what went wrong on defense. And then they've got Nebraska. They've got a top 3 Penn State team. They've got Michigan at the end of the season. If they win those games, they will be in Indy. And they will likely be facing this team yet again on a neutral site. And I can tell you, if I was Oregon, I wouldn't want to see this Buckeye team again. And with that, it hurts, it stings, it's tough, because for a moment there, when they were in field goal range, it felt like, here you go, here's your magical walk-off moment. And then you had the offensive PI, and it just seemed like everything unraveled. But it's frustrating. They are very upset. It is not a fun plane ride home. But every goal they have is still very much in front of them.
And I think that's the key to, and I know Buckeye fans don't want to hear this, but this has been a very weird year in college football. I mean, my goodness, we saw Alabama beat Georgia only to lose to Vandy. We have seen, last week it was like an upset special. Oregon could have lost a couple games already this year. It's just been a weird year. I just don't think there's any great teams out there. And I think that parity, when I say there's no great teams, I think there's a bunch of really good teams, maybe a bunch of great teams. But parity is very much real in college football today. And we can talk about the way that the transfer portal has changed things. We can talk about the way that the NIL world has changed things, and guys are staying around. But there is equality in college football that I don't think I've ever seen, and that on any given night, you don't know who's going to win or lose.
Well, I think that's certainly the case. You talk about the great teams. I think what we saw was 2 great teams here. And I think Buckeye fans need to remember that when they're looking at this game. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of questions about the defense. This wasn't an upset loss. This wasn't a loss that you go, oh my gosh, how did that happen? This wasn't Vandy. This is a very good Oregon team on their turf. Winning road games in the Big Ten is hard regardless, let alone doing it against a number 3 team, a Dan Lanning coach team. I mean, this is not – I think back to that game 3 years ago. That was a different Oregon team. That was not the Oregon team we saw tonight. The Oregon team we saw tonight will continue to be dominant. And the Buckeyes, as I've said many times, I think we'll get another shot at them. They have to correct things. But they came up 1 point and 1 second short of winning this game, and a much different storyline heading the rest of the season. But now they got to go back to the drawing board. They go back to school. The bye week comes at a perfect time. It's like fall camp 2.0 for the Buckeyes. They get a chance to watch everything, break everything down, rest their bodies. We'll learn some more about injuries. Hopefully there's some positive news about Josh Simmons, but that doesn't look likely. And they've got to address, those offensive line concerns. I thought the offensive line, the 2 guys that came in, did phenomenal. I was very impressed with their ability to hold up, even though they're being called on in such a tough spot.
Yeah, I agree. Last thing I want to say is the bye week does come at the right time because they've got to do some soul searching. I think they need to figure out some things with the defense. You cannot tackle the way we saw them tackle. You cannot give up the big plays, and Ryan Day said as much, that the tackling has to be better, and they were able to. And as I look at this game, I think the biggest thing, my takeaway is that I think Ohio State was the better team. I think Ohio State was the more talented team. But you've heard me say this more than once. Sometimes the better team does not win. And I think that happened in this case, that, Oregon got some breaks. They were able to get some things going against the Ohio State defense, and the defense did not make the corrections when they needed to or were not able to. But the offense scored enough points to win this ball game. And so they got to do some soul searching. They got to look at what I don't know if it's personnel, I don't know if it's scheme, but they got to look at some things with the defense. And it goes back to the basics too. You got to tackle. You got to be, and that's a correctable thing. But I saw too many guys just grab it. You got to tackle and you got to wrap.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is probably welcome to the new world of college football. And Dom, I think you're right. If you're looking for a glimmer of optimism here, I do feel like this Buckeye team played really poorly and only lost by 1. I don't think Ryan Day is going to look at this film and say, goodness, we played our best game ever. Kind of go back to the Georgia Peach Bowl game where they played phenomenal and the big plays cost them and they lost. This feels different. This feels like a team that knew they played a bad game. The offense moved the ball a lot. They did well, but in the defense played poorly. They turned the ball over. 8 penalties, and they lost by 1 point to the team that's going to be number 2 in the country. I think this Buckeye team probably drops down to 5 right behind Georgia, and then I think you just start the march. All you got to do is win the Big Ten. All you got to do is take it one game at a time, as Ryan, I'm sure, will say from here on out, and that starts with Nebraska in 2 weeks.
I'm not making excuses, but I will tell you this. I know 8 penalties, but a few of them I'm still scratching my head about, but I've been scratching my head a lot when it comes to some of the officiating.
Dadgummit.
That's absolutely right. Dadgummit. That's the best way to put it. Dadgummit. And we'll keep it at that. Dadgummit. Anyways, he's Adam King. I'm Dom Taberry. Keep it on 10TV, 10TV.com, and all of our 10TV devices that we have out there. We're always here for you. See you, everyone.